We all love a good Star Trek movie, but did you know that there have been several Star Trek movies that never left the drawing board? I have already covered Planet of the Titans, but there are many more. I am Captain Robow, and in this episode of Undeveloped, I will be exploring 6 obscure Star Trek movies that never saw the light of day. Number 1. The first attempt to bring Star Trek to the big screen was a concept called The God Thing, written by Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry in 1975. In the years since the adventures we saw on TV, the crew of the Enterprise has broken up. Kirk has become an advisor to Starfleet, Spock has become a professor at the Vulcan Science Academy, McCoy is married and moved to the Midwest, and Chekhov has become the captain of the recently overhauled Enterprise. So when an unknown alien entity is heading for Earth, demanding worship, it is up to Kirk to reunite the crew and together confront this godlike life force. Some highlights from the rest of the script include the God Thing manifesting itself on board the Enterprise as a humanoid probe, this probe bleeding from hands, feet and forehead, reminiscent of Christian imagery, and the entity dismembering Sulu and gravely wounding Spock. Roddenberry, a passionate atheist, was proud of this screenplay where for once God was going to be the bad guy. As expected, Paramount Pictures passed on the concept and told Roddenberry to write another draft. If the story reads like a mix between the plot of Star Trek the Motion Picture and Final Frontier, then you're not mistaken. Parts of the God Thing found their way into the first Star Trek movie, while the fifth Star Trek movie, written and directed by William Shatner, also features atheistic themes about God. Gene Roddenberry was hurt by this, as he felt that Shatner had stolen his idea and Paramount had greenlit Shatner's script while rejecting his own only a decade earlier. Number 2. After the success of the motion picture, Gene Roddenberry proposed a second Star Trek film adaptation in the early 80s. In the movie, time-traveling Klingons prevent the assassination of US President John F. Kennedy and change the history of Earth and thus the Federation. The USS Enterprise has to travel back in time to 1963 to set history back on course. Along the way, Captain Kirk meets JFK, and in a manner similar to the TOS episode City on the Edge of Forever, Spock would have to kill the American president. While Roddenberry steadfastly believed Paramount would greenlight the movie, the studio passed on the concept and instead hired Harve Bennett to write what would become The Wrath of Khan. Over the years, Roddenberry kept pitching the idea as the next sequel in the Star Trek film franchise, but the project never got off the drawing board. Number 3. In 1992, Paramount was looking to make the 7th Star Trek feature film. It would be a passing the baton story to bridge the original series and the next generation. A writing competition was held among a few scriptwriters. One of these would end up becoming the Star Trek generations that we know, but another, written by Maurice Hurley, is what we're discussing now. Hurley's story starts with a fold in space, through which a hostile alien is sucked into our universe. In order to get home to save his own species, this alien must destroy our galaxy. The Enterprise D is sent to investigate the anomaly. Captain Picard realizes that something is amiss and that the apparently random destruction by the alien actually has a purpose. Trying to find the reasoning behind the attacks, Picard ends up on the holodeck, where he consults a hologram of James T. Kirk. This is because he remembered that the legendary captain had faced a similar situation during the events of the Tholian Web. Picard and the holographic Kirk shared some confrontational scenes on the holodeck, as Picard keeps changing the location the holodeck is portraying to push Kirk to reveal the wisdom he needs to solve the conundrum of the alien's intentions. Not much more is known about this movie, but the holographic Kirk would have been an interesting way to bring the two captains together on the silver screen. Number 4. While IMAX screens are more common nowadays, back in the 90s, this film format designed for massive screens was only available in special built theaters. Still, the novelty of the larger-than-life screen made it a popular destination for many. The high cost did limit most IMAX movies to be shorter documentary-style films. It was in this environment that a Star Trek IMAX movie was being developed in the late 90s. It was to be shot in state-of-the-art IMAX 3D with CGI graphics, a runtime of about 40 minutes, and a budget of $10 to $12 million. The script was written by Rick Berman and Hans Tobiasen. The film was to include characters from all 4 series, from the original series all the way up to Voyager. The main character would have been Miles O'Brien, played by Colm Meaney. Even though Paramount and the IMAX people loved the story, the project never got off the ground. Number 5. Voyager producer Brannon Braga also pitched the movie, which he compared to Marvel's Avengers. Braga's story would have featured various Star Trek heroes teaming up to take on a shared enemy. The movie would get Picard, Data, Odo, Voyager's holographic doctor, and others on one ship, like a think tank. Together they would outthink their enemy and save the day. From what I could find, this idea does not seem to have gotten very far in development though. I have one more movie I want to show you, but first, if you enjoyed this video so far, why not give it a like? That would tell the YouTube algorithm to show this video to more people, and that really helps out my channel. Thank you. Number 6. Even while the 10th Star Trek film, Nemesis, was in production, an 11th movie was being planned. Two of the writers of Nemesis, John Logan and Brent Spiner, hope to follow up that movie with a crossover-style sequel. This is similar to the setup of Braga's concept. Spiner himself explained, "One of the ideas that John Logan and I had about what the next film would have been was a Justice League of Star Trek. Something would bring all the great Star Trek villains together, from Khan to Shinzon. And Picard is the only person who could stop them, and he actually has to go through time and pluck out the people he needs to help him. He goes back to the moment before Data blows up and takes him back to get Kirk and Spock, and go even further back to get Scott Bakula's character Archer. When Nemesis failed financially, both critically and at the box office, the thought of doing another Next Generation movie was quickly put aside. Even without the bad reception of Nemesis, this movie might have been prohibitively expensive, with there being such a large cast of heroes and villains, all with large paychecks. I am Captain Robow, and these were 6 cancelled Star Trek movies. Would you have wanted any of these films to have been released, or is it better that they were cancelled? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to explore more undeveloped concepts like these, click one of the videos on screen.